All right, Dad. So anytime we're talking about God and creativity, we obviously have to talk about Jesus.
Yes.
So growing up, I never viewed Jesus as a particularly creative person because you read the Bible and he's like everything in church revolves around him. So I just viewed him as like a religious guy, as like a spiritual guy. But then as I started to like grow older and especially studying creativity like you, and you started talking to me about how creative Jesus was, I mean, it definitely took on a new kind of framework, I guess, as far as who Jesus is. So just kind of talk about like Jesus as a creative person.
Yes.
Because I don't think a lot of people view him as super creative, even though he was probably the most creative man who ever lived.
Yeah, this is kind of fun, Darren. You know how much I love to talk about this. You know, when you think about Jesus, we've talked, about his life and how he never did anything the same and so forth. But what we often forget is he was a phenomenal storyteller.
Okay.
And Jesus' stories were parables. Now, I wrote some things down here, and I want to first of all, read from the scriptures. And Jesus tells us why he uses the parables. And what he says, I am using stories or parables to conceal everything about the kingdom from outsiders. Okay, now, wait a minute. You're doing this to conceal it, to hide it? I thought our purpose was to, bring it forth.
That's not Christian art.
I know, that's really kind of crazy, isn't it? So I'm asking myself, okay, why would he do this? Well, there's probably a couple of reasons. Maybe one is that he didn't want to put pearls before swine. Maybe these people aren't that way, but that's not really the case. So the more I thought about it, the more I realized that anytime you have a large crowd, you're going to have some people that have spiritual hunger, and you're going to have some people that don't have spiritual hunger. But Jesus cares for all of them. So I was trying to think of an analogy for this, and I thought of a walnut. So you have a walnut, and you look at a walnut, it's large, it's a big nut, and so it's memorable in that way, much like Jesus' stories were rather memorable, okay? But if you really are not ready for spiritual things, you don't really know what that's about, but it's an interesting nut. But on the other hand, inside that walnut is a fleshy thing where the nourishment is, okay? Now, if you're not hungry, you're not going to open the nut. But when you get hungry enough, you just may open the nut, and then you see that there's something inside that's really meaty and that is nutritious and that you're looking for. And I think that it's almost like a time release capsule. His parables were that. They're memorable things, they're memorable stories. But when the spirit was right, then it would be released. I mean, even his own disciples didn't get it. And that leads me then to the next question. Is okay, what is our purpose as Christian artists? Are we supposed to do these things to kind of convert people, or is it enough to just communicate, or what's the deal here? What are we supposed to do?
Because most Christian art is super explicit. It's
yes.
we very much, hey, this is what the message is.
Yeah.
Make sure nobody misunderstands.
Yeah.
But that's not Jesus.
No. Jesus is saying, let those who have ears to hear, hear. And not everybody has them. But nonetheless, when he gives, when he talks about parables, to me, it's a genius art form. Now, as a visual artist, I want to be like Jesus.
Right.
So do I want to create something that's, again, all on the surface, that's shallow, that's superficial, that people get with the first glance? Or do I want to create something that's going to have people asking questions? What does he mean? What is that really about? And again, if there's a hunger there, perhaps they'll begin to pursue that. If there's not a hunger, okay, they'll just say that's a nice picture and then walk away. But it's things of the Spirit are discerned by the Spirit.
Right, yeah, and for me, things are a little different because, I make documentaries which are about the real world and about like what God is actually doing to a person like right now. But even with that, my goal is to be as honest as possible, but also to really push you as a viewer to be like, I don't care if you're uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. In fact, I kind of want you to be uncomfortable.
Right, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And I try to fill my films with stories, with people that will push, in a sense, everybody. It pushes everybody to, these are hard truths, kind of like Jesus said, because I saw Jesus do that.
Yeah.
I see Jesus constantly doing things that are designed to kind of upset the apple cart.
Well, and where did Jesus get his ideas from? And this is something that's interesting. Jesus didn't refer to ancient times. He didn't talk about ancient Israel, remote people in a different time. Jesus walked around and he looked at life. He looked at a woman looking for a lost coin, He's looking at everyday life, and he's observant in this life. And And as he does this, he is putting these things together, and he's telling people things that they see every day, but they never saw. They never connected the dots together, but Jesus did. That requires real intelligence, and I believe in the case of Jesus, as we know, he's going to the Father, and he is spending time with the Father, and so I believe that the Spirit of God is quickening things to him, and we walk along the street, and how often do we see something that all of a sudden turns an idea on in our mind, or a spiritual truth or something. Man. And we as believers, sometimes we just need to open our eyes a little bit and be perceptive, because we never know how God's going to talk to us.
Yeah.